Can you take us through life in Nicaragua prior to your family leaving?
So, I was very young at the time, like 7 or so. And, it's how much do you remember of you being 7 year old? I'm in my 50s. So if I was in my 20s, I probably remember more, at that time. But I do recall that it was very peaceful. My mom and my dad had been married for almost 60 years now. So, they've always been together, very tight family. My brother and I, we both went to private schools. So we were very lucky in the sense that my dad had a really great job. He was a telecommunication by satellite engineer. And so that's pretty much what I remember. Very happy family, very peaceful with like my uncles and my aunts, my grandmother coming to visit, that kind of recollection.
What finalized the decision to leave?
Culmination of events. So Nicaragua at the time was going through civil war, and so bombs started happening, and war exploded in the country. And I remember that one thing that determined us leaving. And I was talking to my parents today because I was like, what exactly? Give me more details, right? And so my dad was telling me, it's like, well, Managua was being bombed because it's like the capital. And so when it was being bombed, there were planes coming from one side of the house and planes coming from the other side of the house. So one thing that I remember very, very clearly, and I was a child, I remember that the house had this huge wall in between, like the very, very center, very wide, right? And I remember my uncle, my aunt, they had come to stay with us because like their house is very not safe, right? Where they lived. So they were staying with us. And so we have even put mattresses to absorb possibly a bomb exploding and falling in the house. And my uncle and my dad used to sit 24/7 behind a bush, checking where the planes were coming from, so that they would tell the people inside what side of the wall they would go to. One day, the house next door, a bomb fell on it, and there was nothing that remained. It was like tabula rasa, right? And so that's the day that my parents said, we have to seek a safer place. And that's when we left Managua, and we moved very shortly with my aunt that lived away from Managua, maybe like an hour and a half from Managua, and we stayed with them. My dad, fortunately for his job, took us somewhere else.
You state that being able to flee was a privilege. Can you share some things required to make it possible?
Absolutely. As I was stating, my dad was a telecommunication engineer by satellite, and he was working for a company at the time called ComSat. At the time when we left to live with my aunt away from Managua, from the bombs falling from the sky, so we're very lucky here in the U.S. We don't see that. My dad and his boss said, "Hey, I have a job for you in Italy." And so my dad was like, let's do it. So he took us out of the country. So I think having the network and the means, the monetary mean made it for us possible that we were very lucky that we were able to leave alive.
Where did you go once you left?
So once we left our home in Managua, we went to the airport because we were trying to get out. And so I recall, at least from like what the stories that I was told from my mom and my dad and my relatives, that when we got to the airport, our money got confiscated. My parents were carrying cash. Our money was confiscated, and also we were not allowed to leave. And so we missed our plane to the U.S. My grandmother was living in Los Angeles at the time in Echo Park, and more about that later. But when we left to Guatemala. And my dad, when the money got confiscated, my dad called his father, my grandfather. And my grandfather at the time, he was the representative of the Ministry of international affairs for Nicaragua. And so when my grandfather showed up at the airport, we were giving our money back. And my grandfather also said, "Hey, you get on your if you want to get your family out of here, because it's very unsafe, you take the next plane, like literally take the next plane." And so we did. So we left to Guatemala, got our money back, and we left to Guatemala. From Guatemala, we stayed only one night, and then from Guatemala, we went to LA. My grandmother was a citizen of the US at the time because she had lived here since 1930s. She went to school, so that's all part of like how the universe works, right? She came to school here. We came from a prominent family, so they sent her to the US for her education, because that was a thing to do back in the days, right? It's like, we're gonna send our kids abroad. And so my grandmother came here, established herself here, and became a citizen of the United States. And thankfully to her, she gave the citizenship to my uncle, and my uncle then was able to sponsor us for residency and now eventually citizenship. And then once we stayed in Echo Park at the time, and I don't know if you guys remember Echo Park back in the 70s, not the safest place, but we had fun. We made it what it was, and 6 months later we were flying to Italy. My dad had left earlier, and my mom, my brother, and I were off to Italy with 6 pieces of luggage.
Have you been back to Nicaragua since?
Yes, I have been back. The very first time that I went back was probably 20 years after I had left, and I vowed to myself that I was never going to go back. And my parents are going to watch this video and they're going to be like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yes, sorry, Dad." I said I'm never going to be back because of the bad memories that I had. And but I have been back because my parents retired and they decided to move back to Nicaragua because we have lots of family there. And so when the first time that I went back, I had an anxiety attack on the plane because I was imagining bombs, I was imagining dead people, I was imagining the worst. I was imagining literally the country still at war. And like in your brain, it's like you can't get rid of it. And I was having an anxiety attack. I was about ready to throw up. And the lady next to me was like, "Calm down, it's nothing like that." Because I told her, "Calm down, you're fine." And I'm like, "Oh, cool down." I enjoyed myself. I remember the first time I stayed 19 days. I went for the holidays, and it was really hot. But other than that, now I make it a point to go back. My parents are older, so I don't know if I'm gonna go first or they're gonna go first. But whoever goes first, I want to be able to enjoy time with them and with the familia, and also to get better with my Spanish. So.
Last question. If you could tell young Maria one thing, what would it be?
Ooh, one thing, young Maria. I was joking with my father because I called him earlier and I said, "Maria, you buy Yahoo, you buy Tesla, Google." That would be the first thing that I would say. And then I'd be like, "Okay, girl," I always would say, "Be yourself. Just be yourself and have an open heart and just treat people respectfully. And, you don't have to love somebody, but you can respect them and just let them live, however life they want to live, and not impose your rules on somebody else, and just literally love the world, the universe." And that's what I would tell the young Maria.
Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.